right, Rhonda, what do you think? Okay. Can everybody hear us okay? Okay, thumbs up. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name's Troy Turley. I'm the Vice President of the Parks Board. I'll be facilitating today's meeting in the absence of our President, Rob, who has a conflict, and Matt Metzger as well. So thankfully, we've got a quorum. But as we get started, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And then Aggie will lead us in prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right.
O Spirit of life, as we prepare for this late spring season and celebration of trails, both local and national, let us be grateful for the natural resources we have and to work together in community to support and sustain life. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Aggie. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and call the May 18th meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to review the minutes from the April 13th meeting for approval.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? Just kidding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the meeting minutes from April 13th meeting have been approved and passed. The next item on the agenda is Master Plan Acceptance Resolution, which is actually quite a huge step for us. We did receive notification that our plan had been reviewed and approved by Greg, and Rob went ahead and accepted that back on the, I'm trying to look for the specific dates here, but it doesn't really matter. April 28th was when it was reviewed and approved by the DNR, and it looks like we went ahead and accepted that with Rob's signature. Is there any,
It has been accepted already?
I do believe I saw a notification of Rob's signature
Okay.
on this document that we had accepted that. So that's a big step for our group. I don't know if there's any discussion or anything that we would like to add with that before we move on.
I think it's great. You know, I commend kind of the board and the committee that helped us to do it. And certainly Donnie from MACOG, who helped hold our hand through the entire process to get us where we got. I think the secondary piece, though, is we created a lot of priorities and goals. So I think we have some action items ahead of us.
I agree.
We were just thanking you for such a speedy approval of our 5-year master plan. No. Mike and I had originally talked with Greg at the state about the master plan process, and I think we were feeling a bit overwhelmed and wanting to make sure that we'd be able to have a plan that was approved. And I'm just really, really pleased with how it went. So I couldn't be more thankful to MACOG, to the support from the county commissioners, to support from county staff, and also the steering committee that worked with us.
Absolutely.
Good deal. Then we'll just keep moving here, and I don't want to drive the meeting too quickly. But this is kind of a milestone meeting for us. We've completed a lot of work up to this point, and today is a good chance for us to reflect on that success. The assurance of accessibility and compliance, I'm really not up to speed with what that is, so I guess I'll just
Yeah, so is this a,
Yeah, so this is ensuring that as park and recreational facilities are being constructed, that we, as a organization, are abiding by the ADA accessibility requirements. So this is just a procedural item that IDNR requests for all submissions, along with the resolution.
Has this been signed already, or do we
No,
need
it,
to?
as with,
We have
if,
to approve it today.
Okay.
yeah.
So is that, Donnie, is that a general discussion and agreement amongst the board members that will comply with that, or?
I mean, honestly, that's up to you all, but really this was just more of a procedural for Rob and Rhonda. When the resolution was approved, then this is just the next form that IDNR requests. So no, there's really no, I don't see that there needs to be any discussion, but
Okay.
So you're saying we don't need to, as a board, to approve this? We can just let it be signed?
it goes with that resolution.
Yeah.
So you have the resolution, that has to be notarized. Do you have a copy of the resolution before?
Which one?
Yes. Is it the assurance of accessibility compliance with architecture?
That's what I,
Resolution is to, for the parks master plan acceptance resolution.
yeah. So last month, we approved it to be endorsed to submit to IDNR, knowing that they're going to have their final review. And upon that final review, the formal procedure then is to have the board officially approve it by resolution.
Okay.
So that item comes first before this ADA compliance one, they're together, but that one be approved first, and then this one is a simple signature along with that resolution.
Okay. So Rhonda, what are our signatures, or I see,
Yeah, actually Rob just signs it.
okay.
Okay.
Do you want to read it?
Sure. Okay, so the Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board, the 2023-2027 Parks Master Plan Acceptance Resolution. Whereas the Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board is aware of the parks and recreation needs of the residents of Kosciuszko County, Indiana, through conducting multiple public engagement activities. And whereas the Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board realizes the importance of sound planning in order to meet the needs of its residents and visitors. And whereas the Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board has prepared the 2023-2027 Parks Master Plan, which consists of identified goals, strategies that enhances the county's quality of life, health and wellness, and economic development opportunities. And be it therefore resolved that the Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board, by unanimous declaration, does adopt the Kosciuszko County 2023-2027 Parks Master Plan as its official plan to guide improvements for the next 5 years for the growth and development of parks and recreational opportunities in Kosciuszko County, Indiana.
Thank you. With that, do we have a motion to accept this?
Yeah. I'll motion that we accept it.
And I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
And then the ADA compliance form would be just probably a simple motion as well, along with that.
So I'll motion that we approve the ADA compliance as well.
Okay, and I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the IDNR letter discussion. I'll go ahead and read that. This is the letter from Greg. I do believe that that's what we're going to cover here. Dear Rob, the DNR Division of State Parks Planning Staff has reviewed the final draft of the 23-28 Kosciuszko County 5-year Plan and Recreation Master Plan. The plan meets the Department of Natural Resources minimum requirements for local parks and recreation master plans. The letter certifies that your community is eligible to apply for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant through this office in the 23 grant year. A new plan will be due on November the 15th of 28, at which time your current LWCF grant application eligibility will expire. If you haven't already, we strongly recommend that you contact the grant selection chief as soon as possible about future grant applications. The grant staff can assist you in your grant application process, and they can be reached by phone or by email. We support your planning efforts and encourage you to participate in grant programs administered by the Division of State Parks. If you require further information regarding planning, do not hesitate to call or email. Sincerely, Greg Bellafus, Chief Planner, IDNR Division of State Parks, Community Grants and Trails, with Donnie on CC. So it's pretty huge. Any discussion about that?
Well, the action item would be to contact that office, right? That it's requesting, so I don't know, I don't think that's been done yet. Is that? Contact them if you want to apply. If we want to apply, yeah. So I think, we just need to also remember, right, this is just another funding opportunity of many, but this is a good, a great one, obviously, and that's why we did the plan that we need to keep in mind. Do you remember, Aggie, kind of the timing of
Yeah.
the LWCF grants?
Yeah, the LCWF grants, it's an annual cycle due in June, and the primary focus for them is not trail development, but it's like land acquisition. It can include a trail, but it's not a trail-specific grant opportunity like some of the others that we've looked at. And when I was thinking about this a few months ago, I don't see that we would be ready this June to pursue an LCWF application.
Okay.
Yeah, just along those lines, I would just reiterate the word strongly recommend were used in the letter, which is always a good, thing to take note of. So we'll definitely have to take Greg up on that suggestion when the time is right. Okay. Hearing no further discussion about the DNR letter, we'll move on for the RFP discussion. And Donnie, I don't know if that's something that you can help us with, or?
Yeah, Dustin and Zach is also joining here virtually. We can help further this discussion. We want to move the third board's direction first.
Okay. Well, then maybe we should talk about it a little bit. I know that in the past, we have had lots of, planning leading up to this opportunity, and we've talked about preparing an RFP as the next step for trails and for blueways. Is there a distinction that we need to make between the RFP, or is it one RFP for both? Is it kind of a dual-headed type RFP for blueways and for trails?
Well, the purpose on this one, right, was to develop our trails and blueway plan specifically. So I think it's part and parcel to both of them, and just, in the way we're defining it.
Are there any requirements that we need to consider, I guess, from a process perspective to make sure that we are eligible to move forward with some sort of an RFP decision or recommendation for next steps? Do we have that sort of authority, I guess, as a group?
Not sure.
Please,
Good, thank
Commissioner
you.
I was about to,
Groninger, please help us out here.
So this coming Tuesday, there's 3 meetings that are going to be happening. We had a commissioner meeting, then we have an ARPA meeting, then we have a HELP meeting, then an ARPA meeting. So it's a busy day, but part of that meeting is going to be with the HELP program, we've got $1 million worth of CBDG funds. And it's going to be a joint meeting that'll be held, and the council and the commissioners will be meeting together, deciding how that CBDG funding will be split up as far as between the county and the 3 communities that were part of HELP. So as we walk through that process, I think that's going to tell us a little bit of what funding is maybe available. But part of that HELP process, the county has already, both the council and the commissioners and the ARPA committee has already set aside $1.2 million for projects through HELP. Well, the projects that are listed in our SIP through HELP, which is our strategic investment plan, is a Chenworth Trail, a master trail and Blue Way plan, a couple broadband projects. And so the council and the commissioners have not decided what of those are going to rise to the top, but some of that has to do with how they decide to split up the CBDG funds, because like the master trail plan is not fundable with CBDG dollars. So it would need to be funded with some of the ARPA dollars that are there. So long story short is we need another meeting here, another couple of meetings that's going to happen this next Tuesday that's really going to determine a lot more of what monies are available. But I really see a strong path forward for both the trail project and the master trail and Blue Way project to be funded through those HELP dollars that have been set aside, either the HELP dollars that are ARPA or the CBG matching dollars, depending upon what it is. Because we do believe the Chenworth Trail project would meet the criteria for the CBDG funds due to the trailer parks and some of the demographics in that area. So I think that, but those will take an income study, so there's things that have to happen. So there's multiple dominoes that have to fall, but the short term is what you guys are gonna need. You can start to get your RFP together before you could actually put it out for bid, though. That would be something that you would need to have funding established and approved through both the council and the commissioners to be able to move forward with that action. But, continuing to dial in what you want this RFP to look like and having some sort of an idea of magnitude of dollars are all things that are going to be helpful when we would present that to the commissioners and the council, and or if it's going to be ARPA funds, the ARPA committee as well for their approval. So, I think that is going to be something that will take a few more approvals to get that funding lined up. But I do think that there's a really strong possibility all along that some of these monies have been aside, that we knew that was going to be one of the projects we really wanted to see rise to the top of the list. But it will take, the whole commissioner board and the council board's vote for approval to be able to do that. So not unanimously, but majority. Also remember that Winona Lake is also pledged, they have a $30,000 grant from the State Board of Health that they're willing to pledge that to the dollars for the master trail and parks, or master trail and Blue Way plan as well. So, there is some money that the town of Winona Lake has already set aside, that they've received a grant from the health department, that they want to see a more master plan versus just what's going to happen in Winona Lake. How do we interconnect Winona Lake to Pearson or back to other routes to Warsaw? So this master trail plan and Blue Way would help facilitate that. So they're willing to kind of throw that money into the pot. So I think that we do have some monies that are already there, but there again, I'm sure that'll take an approval by their council formally once
Right.
you have everything put together on what you're going to be wanting to do, so.
So just to understand the process on the RFP again is some of determining the funding and creating an RFP needs to happen in parallel.
Right.
But there's an approval process that will need to go before the commissioners to get an approval just to even submit an RFP or to start even create an RFP.
You can create, if there's no dollars needed to be spent, you can get the RFP completely created. It's just when you're ready to allocate dollars,
okay.
Like you're committing the county to some sort of dollars, those are what's going to have to drop back and have that approval by both the council and the commissioners.
That makes sense.
Is that correct, Marcia? Does that sound correct? So,
But we have the authority to proceed with the creation of an RFP.
yes, that's all
so
part
that
of
we
your
can-
jurisdiction
yep,
as the
okay.
board, so yes.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds to me like we need to be able to form sort of a work committee here to shore this up and determine what an RFP would look like. before I ask for volunteers for that subcommittee. Donnie, is there anything that you would like to share prior to that?
Sure. I'd just like to maybe just kind of reiterate, when you're putting together this RFP, RFQ, just consider, what you put in is what you will get out of it. So, how in-depth do you want to go with this particular component element? I believe, in the county, there's been a number of planning initiatives that's been going on for, last 5 years or so that I really believe that you guys are kind of going beyond the visionary stages of where trails and blueways should locate. That was something that we had included in the Parks Master Plan development, as well as then Dustin's here also, and Mike for the Ride Walk. There's a number of things that have been going on with identification of where trails should likely go. So I think we're at a point now where it's the how. How do we construct these, and where exactly do we put these trails on the land? And, what are those components that need to happen as far as land acquisition, if need be, the funding sources, as well as even engineering. So engineering will help play in, where this could locate, how the trail should be constructed, et cetera, what easements are needed. So, the vision for the county system was a linear park system that includes trails and blueways. So, I visited Louisville, Kentucky last September. That's where I kind of heard the idea of a linear park system. And I know it's not a new idea, but it was a really neat idea to kind of see that here somewhat in the Midwest of what a linear park could look like. In some spots, it opened up to more of like an urban park setting. But all in all, there was a trail and there was a canoe, kayak access points along the river. And then other components, it's more of a passive recreation. It also helps establish, those regional connections between neighboring counties and neighboring, trail systems, the nickel plate, the pumpkin vine. So I think we just need to consider all those components and really craft up, how we want to, how this plan's going to help us create these trails. I think we know where they need to go. It's just now when we're at the point of the how.
So this board had originally planned to meet about 2 weeks ago, I think, as a working session. And due to a few unforeseen circumstances, we had to cancel that meeting. I did talk to Rob earlier, and both of us were of the mind that we should probably schedule another working meeting, maybe 2 weeks from now, with that same intent. And I think part of the intent was to get into some of these details with maps and start creating the trail and blueway system, if you will, at least as a baseline. And then I think we can also start talking through the basics of what needs to be in the RFP and how we need to structure it. So I'm not trying to push things away from this meeting by any means. We can certainly have the discussion here, but I think if we can get all 5 of us in that working session in a couple weeks, that'll keep us on schedule towards creating this RFP.
Yeah, and I had felt from what Rob had said when we met last month, he saw the board as a whole as being that task force rather than breaking down,
Right.
if possible. Yeah.
But I think
maybe-
there'll be elements of it that'll probably be better tackled if we break it down, but I think, as a whole, I think that was
Yeah.
Rob's intent as well.
And Donnie had talked to us about this some in recent meetings, but there's different types of trail master plans, and it's what are we ready for? And I think in some areas where we've identified a priority for a trail, like we already know there's a right-of-way available to us, such as along a roadway. But in other places where we've said, it'd be great to have a connection between North Webster and Warsaw, we don't know where that would go and if it's feasible. And so I was, it's from what I understand, and you guys, many of you in the room know a whole lot more than I do, but first it's where would it be even feasible to put a trail, a greenway along a blueway or just a greenway? And then the second is then looking at getting access to that corridor, whether it be ownership or right-of-way or some kind of easement, and then the design and engineering. So in some segments, we might be ready to go straight into design and engineering. I think that's where we are with the Chinworth extension. But in other areas, I think we need to back up and really figure out what the ideal corridor would be, what would even be possible, given floodplains, given.
I have
other
that same
problems.
question, and I've had
Yeah.
that same question, but I don't know how much of it is also, do we need to create a proposal, right? And that creates a baseline for a discussion to understand that, right? So if we are for a linear park, what would be the ideal location? And then does that open up those discussions with, people, interested parties, so that we can have those discussions and understand if it's truly feasible or not, or an alternate needs to be found. It seems like the second part needs to happen first, but I honestly almost feel like we're gonna have to, open the discussion by creating a proposal. But I think Dustin may have a direction here.
Not to interrupt, but what you just described is exactly right. The problem that I see in communities, counties, throughout the 4 counties that we work in, is all these opportunities. So we, like you said, some of them already have right-of-way available, so let's go there. Well, but this is the one over here that's maybe more needed, or is cheaper and we can afford to do it now. So what I'm doing with MACOG, we're updating our long-range transportation plan. Active transportation is a component of that. And again, what we're kind of missing is almost that shorter-term planning part of it. So I'm working with the counties, with Warsaw and Winona Lake, the Ride Walk Committee, to try and get like a prioritized list and talk through those things. The list of both, what projects you want to do, and then matching those with funding. There's several different grant opportunities and whatnot that we know are happening either annually or semi-annually, whatever the schedule is. MACOG also has that Safe Streets for All grant that we'll be working on. So that can play into it coming up in the coming years. So where does that all fit? And, for instance, the Next Level Trails, they just made the announcement last week that's going to be open in July. So rather than us getting together as a group right now, for instance, and say, which one should we apply for? Which trail? Let's start talking about that for next round so that we have a plan when the grant opportunity comes up. We've done a lot of the background work. We know what we need to do. We have an idea of what the engineering costs are going to be and/or right away. We've talked with landowners. There's potentially years of kind of upfront work that needs to happen for those projects to just, to take advantage of those opportunities. And so that's what I'm working on through MACOG to kind of get at least, let's say, top 3 kind of set up and lined up. And then a bigger list that we can then start chipping away at in the following years, which, I say all that because it, in some ways, is a lot of what a master plan is, what you guys are talking about, a master plan to do. So I just, if nothing else, wanted to be upfront about what we at MACOG are doing in efforts to support what you're talking about for a master plan, and make sure either we're not duplicating efforts or you want a consultant to do those things. I'm fine with. There's like 1 meeting's worth of information I need for the long-range plan. But we can keep going as well and work with the consultant however best that fits.
So while you're standing at the podium, I'm going to get ahead of our priorities a little bit. I know we have short-term priorities and some opportunities and projects we've identified, but one of our mid to long-term priorities is the connection to other trail systems in other counties, such as the Pumpkin Vine and the Nickel Plate. And as you represent those areas as well, I just want to make sure we can chase a lot of short-term priorities and opportunities, but if it's not in service, perhaps, to connecting the larger trail system, right? We might have missed an opportunity. So how do we best work with our surrounding counties? So at least we're having those discussions with them about how, right now, the Pumpkin Vine doesn't have a southern spur into Kosciuszko County, so that would have to be planned on their part. So how do we have, we need to have that discussion with them to start identifying when and, and where we could connect trail systems.
Off the top of my head, the easy answer is us.
Okay,
Since we're working with them, and I've kind of, what I just described to you, the meeting and getting people together and prioritizing, I just did that with Elkhart County, the first meeting. It will truly be a series of meetings to get down into the nitty-gritty of what the different grants require. So what kind of the pieces that we need to have in place to go after which grant, or which grant we need to address those pieces. Again, that's kind of what I want to map out. So we've had the first meeting and chose a list of about 10 projects in Elkhart County, and then the top 3 from the working group. So those are the ones that we're really going to start digging down into. And then, like I said, kind of knock them off the list as the years go by. One of them I have a meeting next week about is between Wakarusa and Napanee, which is, kind of the first leg of what you're describing to get something going down here. So we're talking with the right people that we can pretty easily get a lunch together or something to have you guys all talk together and then decide what, how big of a priority that should be. That's part of what we're here to do, is help coordinate that stuff between counties. It also, kind of leads to the ultimate question, I think, is how are we going to pay for these things? The way I see this is that we should be able to come up with a spreadsheet or kind of a game plan, if you will, of what projects, again, need which phases to be done, ballpark costs of what those will be, and then you guys can decide, whether you want to fundraise for that or it just doesn't fit because we've got a trail that's going to eat up all the budget for the next 2 years. That's fine. But then we're not wasting our time and not panicking when another grant opportunity comes up. We've got a game plan in place. And again, for, if like Carrie was describing, needing to move budgets or monies around, we've got a plan.
I think it just obviously always comes back to the game plan, as you said, which is our Trails and Blue Way master plan, really, with the detail that we want in there.
I would advocate those would likely be the elements you would want to see in that RFP.
Yeah,
For a consultant to figure out.
right. Okay, thank you.
As far as just a little bit of a vision maybe of what I guess I'm looking at, or what I think next steps would be from a commissioner's role, I think a lot what they've described is really close to what I'm envisioning as well. I think it's just important to get that master plan, and we have an overall picture of what it is, but then really boiling that down to what are our top 3 priority projects, and then I think it even needs to be part of, and this may be even a separate RFP, because when we talk about a master plan and Blue Way plan, that's really more landscape architect versus you really start designing a trail, that's gonna be much more civil engineering. So I think I'm not saying they don't work together, but I think it may almost be 2 separate ones. So trying to get that master trail and Blue Way plan completed with a list of projects, but then right into that might be spending the money from an engineering perspective to even have projects pretty well designed, maybe not stamp drawings that are ready for construction, but really know that this is a feasible plan and how it's gonna be built. Because I think being a contractor, do you really start looking at how you're gonna move the dirt and where the water's gonna go and all the different things that go into that, where the existing utilities are. All those things can add huge dollars or switch dollars around in the cost of a project. So I think having an overall master plan that's really been looked at, that it is feasible, that we're not trying to put a trail where it's never gonna be able to go, that should be part of your master trail, but when you still really start boiling it down to what the project is gonna be, I think that's almost gonna be a separate engineering. But I would say getting that master trail plan, but right on the heels of that, I think having some of your top priority projects identified and then seeing whether the county would be able to go ahead and fund some of that engineering up front. So because when you can apply for a grant that you can show them, hey, we've got it designed, we have a project that's ready, we're just looking for the funding source. Because lots of times, especially if it's an NDOT project, you know, those engineering dollars can be part of it, but if you say, well, we've already paid for that, so it's almost like, it's maybe not necessarily part of your contribution or your 20% match, but it just shows that you're serious and you're further down the road, because sometimes they're looking to try and get a project into a different calendar year if they've got money left over, because all that engineering and acquisition of right-of-way, all those things take time, so the sooner you can really have a true plan identified and kind of walk through that with landowners, because that's gonna take some time, because, you know, not everybody's gonna be excited about having a bike trail in their front yard or backyard or wherever it might be. So, you know, we wanna make sure that people have a chance to kind of warm up to this, that it's not like the decision's been made, this is where it's going, we don't care what you think. You've actually had time to have conversation with these people and help them understand what are your concerns and how can we mitigate those with, you know, screening or fencing or other things that can happen to help make a project, you know, a reality. You know, if the county owns 100% of the right of way, it's a different story, but that's gonna be few and far between that you're gonna have projects that are gonna be, all the property is owned by the county. So, plus, you know, you wanna be a good neighbor to wherever we're sticking these trails to. I think that it's a huge asset to any community that we go into, but some people, that's great, I want it here, but not in my backyard. So, I mean, just making sure that we're having the time to be able to talk with the property owners if that's happening, but we need to have that master trail plan to be able to walk through that, to know that. So, I mean, really being able to get that master trail and Blueway plan identified, and then really prioritizing your list, and then you've got projects that you can really start to dive deep on and start to get some funding for, so.
Very helpful information. So I want to circle back to what I had mentioned a little bit earlier when I was talking about a subcommittee. I wasn't planning to change anything of the way that we're moving forward as a group, but to me, this topic seems to be a little bit blunt. And I think that we need to have some people who can socialize with the commissioners and begin to network to boil down maybe what the top 3 projects might be, which might be an RFP, and how that might fit into a master plan RFP. So I think that for this working meeting that we're talking about, I think that there's a little bit of, I guess, we need to kind of hoe the rows a little bit, maybe soften up the ground to understand what that might be, so that when we do have a working section, that maybe that committee could come together with, hey, this is some of the information that we've learned about, and we use that to spur discussion and suggestions versus just all coming together and trying to sort it out. There just seems like there's some legwork that can be done.
Well, I agree. And I think what Dustin was talking about with the Maycog and meeting with other counties would probably be 1 or 2 subcommittee members as well, too. So, but I think, you know, let's get that first one with all of us, and maybe as we start really identifying kind of as a group, the bigger plan, the opportunity, and then the priorities, it may be easier to break down into the subcommittees at that point when we have those priorities clear on paper.
Okay. All right.
So do we want to, just in terms, again, this next meeting together, obviously Rob and Matt are not here, do we just want to follow up with an email to try to see if we can find time in probably 2 weeks on a Thursday or Friday afternoon?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, Mike.
And then Rhonda, what was is it a week public notice for that? Okay, so if we can firm that up in the next couple of days.
The 8th of June will be in 2 weeks.
The 8th?
The 8th of June.
Okay.
2 weeks.
What is it? What day is that?
Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just propose that through email and see.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
well,
can't, well, I can't be
Right.
there, but if you can get 3 or 4 people there, that's fine.
yeah. Ideally, I think for this exercise, I'd like to get us, I think it's better if we can get all together. So we, but I don't know if you're gone for the entire week or
2 weeks from today, I'm sorry, I apologize, June 1st.
June 1st.
You're wanting 2 weeks from today.
June 1st is, I'm available.
June 1st works for me.
Okay. So Rhonda, can you propose that to the group? Okay, thank you. And then we'll see if Matt, it works for me as well, so see if Matt and Rob are available. On June 1st, in this room, right? So we could potentially find a different location or a different time during the day. Think so,
Make sure the room is available.
yeah.
That's what happened. June 1st for June.
So I guess I have to ask this question because it's kind of still in the back of my mind. So we talked about the Chinworth extension and that plan, and we talked about a Blue Way plan. Would the Chinworth plan be one of our top 3 projects? I just want to test the water if we're thinking about an RFP. Potentially, would that project might be one that would fit in to the top 3?
I think it is already, just by its nature of the status, that we've identified it. We're seeking funding for it, et cetera. So yes, I think whether it's our top 3 or if it's, priority 0, because it's happening now and we're still identifying the next ones after that. But I think these priorities are just a continuous process, right? So it's our first 3, but as we start tackling those and seeking funding, we're going to start identifying the next priority after that.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, so it sounds like we're going to propose a working session on June the 1st. Anything else with that?
Check to make sure that the room is available, if not, I'll wait.
Okay. All right, does that pretty much conclude the RFP discussion? Anything else? Okay, I think we hit that one pretty good. Thanks, everybody, for the commentary.
All action items are Rob's and Matt's, right? Just kidding.
All right, so next on the agenda is MACOG. Not sure what's going on with that, but
I don't have any updates. I think that was probably a continuation from the development of the Parks Master Plan, so I think we can look at what's not here. We don't have to be on the agenda.
okay. Okay, any further business to bring before the council?
Ag, I know you had a couple items, I
Yeah.
do as well, but please
Okay.
go ahead.
So there were 2 items that I wanted to bring up, and one we've touched on a bit already. And one is because there's this opportunity with the next level trail funding, the question is there anything close enough to being ready that maybe we could partner with Warsaw or one of the towns to try and get a proposal in this summer? So I don't know that there is. One thing that came to mind for me is if we are able to do the Chinworth extension, could we use some next level funding to make that trail longer than what it would otherwise be? So that came to mind. Another thing that came to mind for me that I don't know a whole lot about, so I know we want to be able to connect North Webster and Syracuse. And the Syracuse Wawasee Trail Group is planning to go a certain distance. I understand the North Webster Group is going a certain distance, but I don't think anybody necessarily has a plan for how they cross the Continental Divide to link the 2 communities. And
I think they have a plan because they actually even applied for trail monies this last grant cycle. So I think that they pretty well have that identified. Dan Weister, but the North Webster Town Council.
Okay.
He's the one that's kind of leading the charge on that one. But I would definitely have a conversation about that because I think that when you fill out an application and you have that regional are multiple communities working together on an application, I think that brings credence to it and maybe helps it rise to the top, because they were not selected this last trail or this last cycle. But and lots of times it takes a couple cycles to roll through, but I do think that the more you could show that this trail is part of a bigger plan, which it does connect two communities, which is huge. That's one of the big highlights that they really like to see is connection of communities. So, but I'd definitely talk with them about that project, because I think that they've identified a route. They've actually applied for this. I don't know if it was Next Level Trails. Did MACOG help with that?
I think the roll call project.
Okay, rule call? Okay. So I know that they pretty well have a set out plan, and I would totally agree that Chinworth Trail, I mean, that could easily go all the way to Atwood. In fact, as part of our HELP program, one of the things that we're going to do, not knowing for sure how all these dollars are gonna work out and whether there's gonna be CBG funds and ARPA funds available, we may do the income study all the way to Atwood, which is the next community on to the west, just to make sure if we have additional funds, we just keep extending the trail a little bit further till the money's kind of run out. If it doesn't go, we have additional funds to go further, so. So those are definitely a couple projects that I know. Having a trail, I mean, Fred, you probably know better than I think did they have an actual plan for the one around the south side of Winona Lake?
There was some discussion between the city and county, city of Warsaw County and county, because all three of them.
Right, yeah, all three would be involved with that one. I just,
That was,
Is that the one to connect Eisenhower?
yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
That was where that 30,000.
right, was a plan to be able to do the planning of that, correct? So that might be something we'd want to look at too. So I mean, I would encourage it, even if your grant, and MACOG can speak a lot better to this than I, but I think even if your grant or your proposal isn't as robust as you would like it to be, just that you've applied once and you've kind of been through the process, it's kind of, you need to apply a couple, 3 times. So I think being able to have a plan, plus you may get some comments that then you can look at how can we improve it the next time, or what didn't they like about it. So I mean, how you can improve that plan for the next grant cycle is just gonna help you rise to the top quicker, I would think. I mean, MACOG could probably speak better to that, but, so I'd definitely encourage you to probably be looking at what project that might be. I wouldn't like throw all of them in there. I mean, you need to pick and choose, but still trying to figure out which one of those is the best.
And I think in preparation for our meeting in 2 weeks, if we're going, we may need to reshare some of the previous town plans and city plans, right? Because as you mentioned, there is on paper this proposal for the south side of Winona Lake to connect, and that's involved a couple different communities. But Winona Lake has their plan, and Warsaw has their plan, and Syracuse has their plan, right? But I think a lot of these plans are missing the connections, which is where we come into play. So I think we, as we're thinking about this larger activity of creating the master plan, we need to see where those municipalities are planning their, their current trail systems, so.
I guess to add that the connections, that's a big priority with the Next Level Trails program. So, you're thinking along the right lines, I would say, and, Carrie mentioned Dan and then them applying for that. They are planning on applying. I get a little nervous when you start talking about multiple projects applying in the same area, because then it seems like you're not maybe all that coordinated.
Right.
So that's, putting your support behind one project, I think is probably the better route to go.
Okay. Any further business or discussion?
There was something else I wanted to bring up, and then I know that you also wanted to
Yep.
talk about some marketing stuff. Oh, I'm sorry, I turned off my microphone. So we have our new 5-year master plan, and there's a lot in it. It's much bigger than the help program proposals that we have before the commissioners and council. And I want to make sure that we're introducing our whole 5-year plan to council members and the commissioners, not asking for financial support for the whole 5-year plan, but saying, this, we have a bigger vision than just the specific projects. And now that it's not only completed, but approved by the state, but maybe we should do a bit of a meet and greet sessions with council members or with commissioners that haven't been as active in our process to make sure folks are aware of where we are and what our plans are. So that was an idea I wanted to bring up and see if those of us on the board would want to participate in that and how we'd want to go about doing it. So it would be coordinated, not that we need to go in mass, but we could do some one-on-one meetings or one, maybe one of us with 2 council members. Yeah.
I think it sounds like a great idea. I mean, we can't over-communicate on these topics, and anything that we can do to make sure that the information's getting out, I think is a huge benefit to everyone. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And we had a few members of council that attended, either these meetings when the steering committee was meeting with us or the open houses, but many that I don't know how informed they are. And I'd rather have them get information up front rather than when we're asking for money later on.
Yep. So I'm going to ask Carrie on this one. For this type of activity, is it better to come to the formal commissioner or council meetings and present, or is it better to have a separate venue or even one-on-one type meetings?
Well, for the commissioners, there's 2, you've got a majority, so those would all have to be one-on-one with commissioners. The council, you could take, up to 3 at a time, ideally you just 2. But I think having those more intimate one-on-one meetings are going to really help build that relationship stronger. You can really have those conversations over a cup of coffee or whatever. Because I do think it means a lot to those people that they understand what you're doing, where you're going, what your greater vision is. And sometimes that's just really tough to really connect with them in a public meeting. Just that you have enough time that you can really spend the time you need versus another agenda item. Yep, thank you, next, that you can really spend some time with them. So I would highly encourage you to try and break those into smaller meetings and build those relationships because, at the end of the day, you want to build that trust level with all the council, all the commissioners, to where you're not just coming when you're asking for money. You've got something to be proud of, something to celebrate that you need to bring to them and tell them about it. You could do it in a public meeting as well, but I would encourage you to, if you're able to, even have those deeper one-on-one or 2-on-2 or whatever it is, meetings that would be helpful as well. So, but I think it's a great idea, Aggie, and I would applaud you guys doing that because I think trying to build the relationship with both council and commissioners, that's what's going to get you your funding and going to get you projects completed. Because, with even to apply for grants, all that has to be asked for permission from both the council and from the commissioners before you can even apply for a grant. So it's not just, you're going to spend the money. I mean, even before you apply for a grant to get money, you have to ask. Because lots of times there's matching dollars. Well, the county wants to know what you're signing is up for. If we know we're going to have to match 20% of it, we need to know that before we even allow you to apply for this grant. So definitely would encourage that.
I would probably add that there's also an incredible knowledge of the county and properties and ownership, et cetera, that we don't have on the board. So any additional information, right, having from that group, right, would really, I think, help our efforts. So how do we want to attack that? Do we want to just try to, how do we want to break that up and plan for that?
I'm one of the council appointees to this board, so it makes sense to me that my focus would be on council members. And I'd have to look back and see who else was appointed by council. That might be part of it. And Troy, you could maybe help out.
Yeah, I think that you and Matt were appointed by council.
I was
And
appointed by a
Mike-
commissioner.
Rob and Mike by commissioners, so
commissioners,
I think
yeah.
that structure is very handy, and by all means, I think that each and every one of us can chip in and build those relationships for trust, timing, and match funds and things like that. But again, I think that before we kind of jump onto those things, we need to, as a group, kind of have our game plan together a little bit earlier as to what we were talking about as we think about how this RFP would look.
Well, let's have that discussion in 2 weeks as
Okay.
part of the
Right.
agenda of how we want to approach this.
Yeah, and then I kind of see it kind of starting to move out. Okay.
That was the two topics I
Did-
wanted to bring up, and then you wanted to
Did we
talk-
want a guest speaker? Did you
Yeah,
want?
it would be great to hear from Scott. So Scott Fetters, I had asked him to join us because he's an expert. He's with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And Rob and I had had a chance to talk to Scott a bit as we were talking about our vision for a linear park that includes the Tippecanoe River. And I had mentioned to Scott that we would be working on an RFP, and had asked him if he had ideas for what could go in that. But also knowing that our parks master plan is more than a greenway along a blueway. We're also looking at additional greenways. And you work across many counties, Scott, and you have lots of experience. So we would love to get your expertise, and I know you've also offered to
Yeah.
give us advice as we need it down the road, too.
So, introduction, my name is Scott Fetters. I work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with the Department of the Interior, and my office is located right here in Warsaw. And I've been a resident of the Kosciuszko and Whitley County areas since about 1993. And in about 2017, maybe, myself and Ed Roberts and his wife Michelle started the P4C Paddlers for Conservation nonprofit with a vision of trying to bring people to the Tippecanoe River and improve opportunities for seeing nature and enjoying the river. And we were pretty successful in that in the first 2 or 3 years, and then COVID hit. And just last summer, I had to relinquish my vice presidency role in that and turned it over to Ryan Martin, who works for Louis Dreyfus. And, but in my day-to-day life, I'm a fish and wildlife biologist, and I work to provide cost share funding to private landowners to restore wetland and prairie habitats in Northeast Indiana. I cover a 25-county area, basically from Angola to Indianapolis to Marshall County. Can count on about one hand how many counties I really work in, because most everything south of here is all corn and soybeans. So a lot of what I do is in Kosciuszko, Whitley, Steuben, LaGrange, Noble. And I've worked with numerous, while I was sitting here trying to think of all the county parks departments I've worked with over the last 31 years. And I can't even remember them all, but I know it's more than 20, including the largest, Hamilton County and Carmel, Lake County, LaPorte, Elkhart, St. Joe, LaGrange. Little county of LaGrange County has one of the best county park systems in the whole entire state of Indiana. And I've probably provided in excess of $1 million of cost share habitat, whether it be doing habitat restoration or actually even providing money to purchase ground. So my interest lies in the habitat in the Tippecanoe area. I think there's a great opportunity. You should be commended for getting your master plan completed. And you should make it known to the public, to the commissioners and the county council, because that is the most important step and being able to apply for federal funding through the Land and Water Conservation Fund is probably the single largest opportunity for park development in the country that I'm aware of. And it's been fully funded under the Biden administration. It comes from the leasing of offshore energy rights. And numerous counties that I've worked with have updated their master plans. They've received LWCF. In the little town of Albion, Indiana, in Noble County, we just finished a land acquisition project there for the park at an existing park. And it took another 30 acres. They were able to acquire it, and then I provided all of the cost share money to restore it, to restore about 5 acres of wetlands and about 30 acres of native prairie around it. And now this summer, they'll also be building a trail system that'll tie into the town's park system. So that's been my involvement, and I just thought it'd be an opportunity to say thank you and congratulations and good luck.
Thank you. What was that last community you were talking about, creating the trails?
Albion, Indiana,
Okay.
yeah, Noble County.
So it doesn't sound like it, but one question I immediately have is, are our activities opposed to your activities in any way?
Well, I would have to clarify this statement. If you receive federal funding and your activity may potentially impact endangered or threatened species, you're going to have to go through the Endangered Species Act, and that's where an outside consultant will be helping provide you with that information. I can do some of that locally here for you and let you know, if you give me a map and this is where we're proposing to do something, I can at least point you in the right direction and say yay or nay. But there are some properties in the county along the river that I'm not at liberty to say where they're at, but there could be some potential down the road opportunities to purchase property along the river using state and federal funds that I have used quite frequently. And those monies are really coming from the Endangered Species Act. The county is, some may say, blessed or cursed. There are federally endangered species in the Tippecanoe River, clubshell mussels, Indiana bats. A little farther downstream, there's a few other mussel species, but they're definitely candidates and worthy of protection. And some of those types of properties might be able to be purchased and protected in perpetuity. Good?
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike, logo?
Yeah, just a couple quick updates. Matt and I have continued the work with a graphic designer that we had talked about previously for designing a logo and such. So there's been a few proposals created. I haven't seen them yet, but by the time of our next meeting, I think we'll be able to share how that work has progressed and maybe, either modify or agree on something at that point. And then a couple of the other, my comment earlier is I think we need to start looking through our goals and priorities and start identifying kind of owners and action items to those things. From the marketing side, there's 2 or 3 that are already in process. One is the determining from the pumpkin vine, how the pumpkin vine and nickel plate pay for maintenance and how they maintain it. I'm willing to, I've started that, but I'm willing to take that action item on.
Okay.
And then there's a few other marketing items related to the website and that I think that we've actually have a solution to. But we can maybe formally talk about that in our next meeting as well. I just want to make sure that, a lot of the activities, especially short-term, I think fit into the, the master trail and greenway plan and engineering aspects of it, but we do have some elements there that I think we just need to start ticking those boxes and understanding as it will help us in the future.
So did you want to go through some of those goals and start to break those out?
Well, again, I think it might be, I don't want to put too much on to this next meeting, but I think it might be a better discussion with all 5 of us
Okay,
as opposed to just 3 of us. But I can, there will be some very specific ones that Matt and I will be able to give an update to and possibly even call complete by our next meeting.
okay. All right, any further business? Okay, well, hearing none, no other topics of discussion. Do we want to conclude today's meeting?
Motion that we adjourn.
You moved? I'll
Yes.
second again.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Okay, well, thank you all very much. That concludes the May board meeting for the Parks Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
I spoke to him, he's on his way into the building, so he just got back half an hour ago with his wife.
Oh, Rob Sack.
I didn't ask him how.